Hello and welcome to the How Uncivilized Podcast, where two cool dudes explore the galaxy together, all the way into the unknown regions of Star Wars lore.
Unknown to us, at least.
Well, we both love Star Wars, so much in fact, that we've had to split this recording into 2 episodes because we just kept talking. With that in mind, here's episode 1 of the How Uncivilized Podcast. Well, good day, listeners out there, from younglings to Jedi Grandmasters. It's good to see you all.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I'm Spencer, and this is Charlie, who
Hi.
I'm pointing at.
How you doing?
And thanks to the magic of audio listening, you don't get to see that bit. So the aim of this podcast essentially is Charlie and me talking about Star Wars. But basically, Charlie, do you want to fill us in on what you did?
Yeah. So a long time ago, we're back in 2015, which was 5 years ago now. If
Goodness,
you can believe.
I feel old.
Yeah, 4.5 years ago. So The Force Awakens was released in cinemas. It was all very exciting, you know. I enjoyed the film very much. But, you know, after watching The Force Awakens, I had a few burning questions that I wanted answered. So I wrote them all down. And yeah, so I have on my computer a list of about 50 questions, you know, which I wanted answered after The Force Awakens. Now that the trilogy is complete, you know, Rise of Skywalker has come out, I found this list again as I was perusing through my computer. And so I was like, oh yeah, let's see what these questions are like now in hindsight, you know, what was answered, what was not answered. Most of it's going to be what was not answered, but, you know, we'll get to those
We certainly will.
in time. Yeah. So that's what we're going to do is we're going to look at all these questions which past Charlie had, and we're going to run through them and see what the answers were. Yeah.
And lucky for you guys, we get a few extra bonus questions from me thrown into. So basically, yeah, we're just going to go through a few questions in each episode and hopefully not, natter on too long, but give you a little bit of history.
Yeah, so normally we're going to have a theme for the episode, but we thought to just warm up for our very first episode, we just have a few general questions which aren't really related in any sense, you know, just kind of general, almost world building questions, I'd say.
Sound, do you want to fill us in on the questions?
Yeah, so question number 1 was, who is Lor San Tekka? Lor San Tekka, for those who don't know, he's the guy at the beginning of episode 7 who, you know, hands the thing to Poe and then immediately dies. So, you know,
a great impact on the Star Wars universe.
Kind of, what was the significance of him? Why did he know about Luke's whereabouts and stuff? And if you go just by the films, you know, we of course realize that we don't find any more information about him at all. So, you know, that's all good then.
He's just dropped in the ocean, and he's gone again.
Yeah, dropped in just to be forgotten about. The second and third question are kind of the same thing. So it was question 2 was, who are the Knights of Ren? And then question 3 was, in Rey's vision that she has when she touches the lightsaber and sees all those things, were those creepy guys in the masks standing by Kylo Ren, were those the Knights of Ren? And the answer to both was, yes, those were the Knights of Ren. And
who are these elusive Knights of Ren?
Really important. They're basically expendable. They're Kylo Ren's friends that he immediately kills.
Well, let's not jump to the end of the podcast too quickly.
Okay.
You know, let's see what else we got lined up.
So then, question 4 was, were there any other Jedi Luke was training, you know? So
great question.
We see the Jedi Temple destroyed in episode 7. It's kind of expanded upon more in episode 8. We see more flashbacks of that. So the question was, did anyone survive? Are there any other Jedis out there?
Yeah, I've always found that weird. You see the sort of the film and it comes in at a strange time and you just don't get to, see any of that kind of lore, the actual history that goes on. But anyway, we'll come into that a bit later.
Absolutely.
Let's jump into the next one.
And then the final question of this one was more of a fun one, which, or at least before I did the research, I thought it would be fun. But it's, why does C-3PO have a red arm? And this, it's not explained in the actual films, but it is explained in further canon. So we'll find out about that.
Brilliant. So Charlie and I have each like set ourselves certain questions to answer. And basically whoever has done the research will sort of kick off the first question, which actually was me.
It was you, yes.
So the question is, in its entirety, who is Lor San Tekka, the guy at the beginning of the film with Poe, and how did he get Luke's map? Why did Luke give him the map? You've answered the question that says we don't find out. But alas,
I feel like I'm about to.
There's a little bit more in the old history pile.
Ooh, very nice, very nice.
So Lor San Tekka, he was a male human explorer, and he fell in love with the ideals of the Jedi Order around the time of the Clone Wars. So, he was born sort of towards the end of the sort of old Republic, as you'd call it now, to sort of like mirror the New Republic, which comes in sort of after the Battle of Endor.
Yeah.
So he collected and sought out Jedi lore that the Empire tried to destroy. So I imagine, like, once the Galactic Republic fell, the Empire tried aggressively to sort of destroy everything to do with obviously there was the Jedi Purge. They were trying to destroy the Jedi, but also they tried to destroy everything to do with the Jedi. So, like artifacts, stuff like that, places of worship. And so he helped aid the New Republic in finding all that lore and all that stuff. He also helped Luke Skywalker find all these Jedi artifacts and knowledge that was thought to be destroyed. He was part of the Church of the Force. Mm-hmm. Now I can hear you asking me a question there.
What is the Church of the Force?
Well, if you visit them on a Sunday, the Church of the Force was basically the Jedi Order, but for non-Force sensitive people to join. It was sort of founded at the sort of the rise of the Empire kind of time.
Yeah.
People wanted to sort of challenge the Empire. So
challenge the status quo, as it were.
Indeed, yes, it was challenging the status quo. So, as I say, it was created around the time of the Republic's demise, and they basically hoped for a resurrection of the Jedi Order to bring balance to the Force.
Oh, yeah. He even says that in the film.
Yeah.
Bring balance to the Force, bring back old man Luke.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one thing, like, in all the films, across the board, it's like, what does that actually mean, bring balance to the Force? There are loads of theories, like it's that, in order for the Force to exist in its entirety, you must have sort of yin and yang, the positive and negative, which to me implies that, there must be as many Sith as there are Jedi, or at least there must be some kind of middle ground.
Yeah, all that stuff about balance, that was what I was hoping for out of episode 9, but no, it's just balance apparently means the good guys win.
Well, yeah, and I actually did some research into what the balance of the Force actually meant. I suppose, going off into a little tangent here of the question, because it came up and I actually thought, that's never been explained. So obviously there are like a couple of like ideas about what that means, but the main thing, as you say, like the good guys win.
Yeah.
So it's something that refers to, so this is sort of like a quote here, but it's the ideal state in which the Force exists in nature. So for the Jedi, this is the light side. Mm-hmm. And so they think that the presence of the dark side disrupts the natural state which brings the Force out of kilter. So their idea of bringing back the natural state is to eradicate all the dark side.
Yeah.
Basically, it's the theory
all the
there.
good stuff, like grass and trees and stuff,
essentially.
Like in The Last Jedi, when it's like, there's all the grass and trees and stuff, which is good, but then there's also like seaweed and stuff, which is bad. And that's the dark side. The dark side is the seaweed of life,
Definitely, mate.
Yeah.
Salty and disappointing.
Yeah, salty and wet.
I'm sure we could talk about salty and wet all day.
That's in our late night version of this podcast.
Yeah, that's the late night version. And so, like, obviously, it comes to like Lor San Tekka. Why, like, and how did he find the map that led to Luke? Well, basically, it's quite convoluted, but essentially, he spends a long time trying to find Luke, and ends up being able to essentially do a deal with some shady character that enables him to like get the last known coordinates of the X-wing that dropped into the sea. So
very cool.
yeah, basically through that he gets it, and then he sacrifices himself for the greater good.
Yes.
As we see in the film.
It's very true.
How exciting.
Was he the not to mix our franchises here, but was he in Game of Thrones at this point? Because I always like to imagine that he was killed in Star Wars and went on to become the three-eyed raven in Game of Thrones.
Exactly. Why can't the universes connect in that way? The Force
it's something
exists.
I'm waiting to see.
Well, exactly. The Force can exist in all universes. It is in all life. So why not? Dragons could, be Force beings,
That is very true, I mean, Obi-Wan rode on that weird, lizard thing,
exactly.
in episode 3,
So there's a connection right there.
So he was the, Khaleesi of the Star Wars franchise,
But as far as, the timings of that are concerned, I don't really know. I'd like to think that's true. I kind of do appreciate that kind of, internal workings of the universe.
Very nice, very nice.
A nice mix. But yeah, that basically sort of answers all the questions you put out there. But as we've said, it doesn't actually say anything in the film. I kind of feel obviously this all comes from books and lore that's created, but it tends to be after the fact.
Yeah,
so to sort of explain
a lot of this stuff I've found is it happens in hindsight. All these things, all these explanations is. A bunch of people have asked a lot of questions like we are here, and someone's come along to fill in the gaps. This question, this first one, who is Lor San Tekka? I didn't really think we would find out in the films, to be honest. So unlike some of the questions later on, I wasn't really that disappointed that we didn't find out who he was, because it's not essential really in terms of
he was dead in a few minutes.
Canon, yeah.
It's sort of well,
it's cool that I now know who this person is. That rogue explorer.
Well, that's it.
The three-eyed raven. Yeah.
The all-knowing being.
Yes.
There he is, popping up, finding Luke Skywalker. Makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
But yeah, so that's basically my understanding of it. I guess that kind of answers the question.
Yes.
About him, that weird old guy at the beginning.
Cool. So, if we move on to question 2 and 3, which, just a reminder, question 2 was, who are the Knights of Ren?
Who are they?
Yeah, and I'd like to express that this was written in all caps, so it's more actually who are the Knights of Ren?
Yeah.
But, so I need to bring that emphasis across, who are they, And then the third question was, who were those creepy masked guys standing with Kylo Ren in the rain during Rey's vision? Were those the Knights of Ren?
And I mean, I assume
those was in italics,
Yeah, definitely.
A lot of expressiveness and passion in these questions.
Well, there needs to be, because, I mean, like you say, who are they and where did they come from? And also, does Ren link into his name? Is it just followers of that dude?
Where did they come from? Where did they go?
Where did they come from?
Knights of Ren. So this was my question, or these were my questions. So
yeah, do you want to fill us in?
Who are the Knights of Ren? Well, past Charlie. The Knights of Ren were indeed the people in the rain. So they're described in the extended canon as 7 dark warriors. So you've got Kylo Ren, Aplek or something like that. They've all got strange names, as everyone does in Star Wars. Cardo, Kuruk, Trudgeon, which is my personal favourite, because I imagine him just trudging along through the desert.
Yeah, that is a very interesting name.
Ushar and Vikrul. And there's actually...
Vikrul.
Yeah, it reminded me of Vikram from Friends.
Yeah, I
if
was
you've ever
thinking
seen
Vikram.
that episode. It's Ross's voice over the phone, yeah. This is Vikram. That one, yeah. And there's actually a not kind of secret 8th member, but the 8th member of the squad who's not in the films at all.
Is it Snoke? Wait, no, he's in the films.
No, he's in the films. It was the original leader of the group who, funnily enough, was called Ren.
Wait, so it's not actually named after Kylo Ren?
It is not named after Kylo Ren.
Wait, did Kylo Ren kill the leader and take his name? That's kind of dark.
No.
Oh, well, I mean, it's kind of weird.
It's kind of
it's
sweeter than
coincidental.
that, yeah. I will get into this later, but Kylo Ren was given the name because he was part of the Knights of Ren.
Oh,
Yeah,
see,
so-
I thought it was like...
That's what I thought too. Like, instead of
You know,
it being he came up with the Knights of Ren, the Knights of Ren was a pre-existing group that he joined.
Wouldn't it be awful if it, like, the dude's name was like Dave, and then it
Yeah.
was like...
Knights of Dave.
And Kylo Dave.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Kylo Dave.
That would be very disappointing.
Strikes fear in the heart of literally no one. So they were a bunch of masked warriors. They were all force sensitive, but they were untrained, and that's the significant part about them.
So they were actually force sensitive?
They were actually force sensitive, but because of them being untrained, they were neither Sith nor Jedi, although they do align themselves more with Sith values, really.
Yeah.
They kind of, even though they're not Sith, they kind of fill the hole a bit left by the Sith, within the Force. Yeah. And the way they use the Force is they would feel it in combat, and they would use it to kind of, using the hate they felt, it would increase their power, so it would kind of heighten their reflexes, and some of them had like heightened vision and heightened hearing, which would help them in combat.
Yeah, because that's a really good point, isn't it? Because people think, oh, it's just, when it comes to the Jedi and the Sith, it's literally just them working really hard to get their form right, when actually quite a lot of it is the Force serving as an ally to them in battle.
Yeah.
And they're able to sort of anticipate movements and of their enemies and and sort of give them strength.
That's always the thing people say of like, oh, in lightsaber battles, why don't they just use the Force to like turn off the lightsaber? It's like, well, obviously they're using the Force to make sure the other person doesn't do that. It's like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a counter.
Yeah. I mean, don't look into that too much, because it's kind of, why doesn't Kylo just do that in Episode 7? But no, it's a film. We want to enjoy ourselves, They emerged around the time of the fall of the Galactic Empire, and they emerged out of the unknown regions, which is all very spooky and interesting. I hadn't really heard of the unknown regions much before I started all this research, and ever since I started looking into this, it's come up a lot.
It's great. The unknown regions, it sort of stretches out into the expanded universe, and obviously like quite a lot of canon, but it's sort of basically used to sort of invoke mystery and higher powers. Yeah. And there's quite a lot of, because I assume what they're referring to when they talk about that is that like the Republic is only like, I don't know, like a fraction of the size.
Oh yeah.
You think of like in terms of the universe, there's so much more out there, so much more unexplored. It's like us in our galaxy and the rest of the galaxy not being explored, kind of the same thing.
So, they emerged from the unknown region, and in that time they acquired their ship, and their ship, I love this, is called the Night Buzzard. What a great name.
That's great.
It's great, but also terrible at the same time.
What does it do? Like prey on dead ships?
I don't know. It just kind of hops around like a buzzard, doesn't it? Flies places. So they were led by Ren. And the interesting thing about Ren is that although Ren was a person, Ren wasn't his true name. His actual name is unknown. And he was named after the lightsaber he carried. So
wow,
Ren was a lightsaber wielding person. And the lightsaber, which was their kind of like almost holy relic of the Knights of Ren, was called the Ren. That was the name of the lightsaber. And it was believed that this lightsaber was the lightsaber of Darth Vader, but of course this is not actually true. The lightsaber was destroyed or something. I'm sure, I don't know what happened to the lightsaber after Darth Vader was killed, but
I thought it like most things in Star Wars, fell down a vent.
Oh yeah, fell down a vent, and then was picked up by an orange or a Satsuma.
Well, mate, I imagine this one was probably a purple Satsuma.
Further needing. Yeah, so it wasn't actually Darth Vader's lightsaber; it was just another lightsaber, which was lying around.
As they do.
This lightsaber was really cool because it had an inbuilt thing built on it, built by Ren, and it was a self-destruct feature if it left his hand during combat. And so
wouldn't that blow him up though?
Yeah, it was kind of like it's not the best thing I've ever heard.
It's quite like a cocky statement though.
Yeah, so it's kind of an almost self-destruct thing of like he was willing to kill everyone if it meant like his enemies not succeeding.
And also it kind of like feels to me like he's sort of going, I'm so powerful, I'm not going to drop this, so it doesn't matter. Like I'm just going to slay you all.
Yeah, it is a bit of a come at me kind of thing. Come at me, bro, because I'm willing to do everything. And they all lived by this code because Ren was a firm believer that he wasn't actually the leader of the group. They all followed the same kind of doctrine, and so therefore they didn't follow him. They followed this code that they had.
Right.
And this code was essentially do what I want. Like, so it was
It's not really a code, though.
live how you want, take what is given to you, and consume what the dark side sends.
So it's like the dark side, but with even less rules.
Yeah, so it's essentially do what I want, you know, get given stuff, going to use it, you know?
Yeah.
So the reason why they all wear helmets is to add to their fearsome appearance. They believe it's like intimidating to their opponent, but if they don't require intimidation, they do take off their helmets in moments. For example, in episode 7, when Kylo Ren was interrogating Rey, he took off his helmet because he realized intimidation, you know, wasn't going to work. He needed a new method. So that is something they do.
So he wore that helmet to be part of the Knights of Ren.
Yes, his helmet
'cause I
was
always
given
thought-
to him as part of the Knights of Ren. Yeah,
I always thought that was some kind of weird writer's homage to Darth Vader.
I thought that too, but you know, the canon, says what the canon says. Yeah,
can't go against that, I guess.
yeah. So even though I thought it was his homage to Darth Vader, you know, it was actually something which was gifted to him by the Knights of Ren.
Wow. Like a warming gift, you know. Welcome to the crew.
Yeah. Hi, how are you?
Hi.
So here's your uniform. You know? Yeah, so they carried various weapons, but like I said, the most famous one was this lightsaber that Ren carried. And the most notable moment or use of this lightsaber was in a battle with Luke Skywalker, Ben Solo, and funnily enough, relating back to your question, Lor San Tekka.
Wait, so wait. What was Lor San Tekka doing?
He was kind of just there, like...
What, just observing?
Yeah, so what happened in this situation was that he used it to threaten Luke Skywalker, Ben Solo, and Lor San Tekka. It was on a planet called Elfrona, another great name, which I struggled to pronounce. So this was in the Outer Rim, and this was where an ancient Jedi outpost was located. So the Knights of Ren wanted these artifacts because it's like Jedi artifacts, you know, tracking these things down. But Luke also wants these artifacts because, you know, him and Lor San Tekka were explorers and they wanted to find these things. So Ben Solo was his Padawan at the time, so he went along as well. And so what this fight basically was Luke took on all of the Knights of Ren at once, including Ren, whilst Ben Solo kind of just made sure nothing happened to Lor San Tekka. And
wow, that sounds like the movie we all wanted to see.
I've written here, it was more interesting than anything we saw on screen.
I feel like this whole confrontation, this whole thing, like that would have been way better than the whole trilogy combined. Like, that was just what we were crying out for in those whole movies.
Luke, kind of similar to how he fought Kylo Ren in episode 8, was literally, he was entirely defensive in his approach. He didn't kill any of the Knights of Ren, but he was able to like disarm them and make it like... So he defeated them without using like excessive force, and he used only like blocking and dodging.
Wait, how did he defeat like this guy? I mean, I know he's not called Ren, but I mean, the lightsaber's called Ren. I assume, no, he's called Ren after the lightsaber then.
It's the thing of...
But how did he defeat him?
Well, he didn't actually defeat him because Ren used his trusty, you know, old lightsaber self-destruct threaten to be like, oh, you know, you've deleted all my friends. Defeated all my friends.
Control, Alt, destroy.
We can cut it later. Future Charlie, cut that. Yeah. But he defeated all of his friends, and then Ren was like, oh, no, you can't beat me, because if you defeat me, I'm going to let go of this lightsaber and it's going to blow up like this whole base we're in. So that
must
kind
have
of
like huge destructive power.
Yes, like
if he's threatening to blow up a whole base or whatever, like that seems pretty...
It was incredibly destructive, and you know, kind of seems like a terrible idea. Like
that sounds like an awful idea. But equally, these kind of weapons sound like something that, you know, they could do with in the films.
Yeah, it was very cool, and we will never see it ever on screen.
That's such a shame. See, these little like snippets of information, a lot of these like adventures that happen, you know, between films.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, they've kind of dipped into it a little bit with Rogue One. You know, they've tried to fill the story, but they always seem way better. And Rogue One, you know, that to me is one of my favorite Star Wars films. I mean, it's really up there. Might even say it's my favorite.
Oh, wow.
Purely based on the fact that it is such an original, well-written story.
Yeah.
It kind of explains a huge plot hole in episode 4. For me, it just is quite a nice movie.
It was definitely my favorite of the new ones, definitely for the nostalgia, but also like the freshness of it. Like I really enjoyed it. Yeah,
I'd love to see a film just called Ren. Just Ren. And
Ren.
Yeah, and then like about like Luke Skywalker, Ben Solo and the Knights of Ren and that whole conflict. That sounds like a whole film conflict to me.
Yeah, so this fight, although it's like very cool to imagine like the Knights of Ren going up against Luke Skywalker, like it was very one-sided. Like Luke, because he was a Force user and because the Knights of Ren essentially aren't Force users, even though they are Force sensitive, it was very one-sided. And there's a great quote, which is something like Luke Skywalker described their use of the Force as akin to like trying to fight with a hammer, whereas he used it as like a blade. So,
Yeah, just slice through the hammers.
Although, it was 7 against 1, it's Luke Skywalker. He's fine. And so that fight happens, and then there's an interesting exchange between Ben Solo and Ren, where as Ren is leaving, carrying his comrades away, he kind of turns around to Ben Solo and senses the darkness within him. And he tells him, "Come find me when you're ready," which is a very, very cool, ominous like moment.
Yeah.
So then, speaking of Ben Solo, future Kylo Ren. So after the fall of the Jedi Temple, which I'll talk a bit about later when we talk about what other Jedi are around. He went to join the Knights of Ren. Firstly, he met up with Snoke, and then Snoke kind of pointed him in the direction of the Knights of Ren of like, you met these guys. I think you'd like their company, So
definitely. Well, I feel like Snoke is just like a big old ex machina for that kind of like the whole thing of like, what's Kylo Ren doing here?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll throw in this random dude that can use the Force better than anyone we've ever seen.
Yeah. And so
just
he met up with the Knights of Ren. Was like, hey, want to join? There's further stuff, which is like his first mission with them and stuff. Then after he completed that mission, he was given his name, Kylo Ren. As far as I can tell,
like
other Ren just kind of disappears. I'll look into that a bit more, but like
seems like a weird kind of like initiation kind of. I don't know. That seems kind of weird. Like you say, where did Ren go?
I feel like it was almost it was a subtle thing by Snoke, to Kylo Ren, who he could manipulate really, and it was a highly sensitive Force user. He almost put him in the Knights of Ren because Snoke thought like having the Knights of Ren on his side, because they were kind of like a rogue force, really. Just kind of roving around the galaxy doing what they want. I think Snoke put Kylo Ren in there, so that group would then become part of, the First Order.
It seems like he manipulated both of them.
Both
groups to sort of to his own ends. And I mean, I suppose you could say that about, quite a lot of Dark Force users.
Yeah. And by episode 9 of the Knights of Ren are Kylo Ren's like personal bodyguard group,
I mean, are they still around? Like,
no, he killed all of them at the end of episode 9, remember? Without, the faintest remorse, Wow. It's like, wow, all my buddies from all this time.
Oh yeah, I remember
and he
now.
just killed them all. I mean, it's a very cool moment because it's when they pass the lightsaber like through the Force connection, which is that's very cool.
That is one of the better parts.
And there's a funny story about a kind of in terms of like the behind the scenes use of the Knights of Ren, because how we said when we'd watched episode 8, we wished what are they called, like the Praetorian Guards, the red guard things, in Snoke's chamber. We were almost like, oh, it would be cooler if they were the Knights of Ren. Well, Rian Johnson has been quoted saying like he purposefully didn't use the Knights of Ren there because he knew he was just going to kill them all off, and he wanted them to have like more of a purpose, which is quite ironic because they didn't. They were just killed off.
That's really funny considering he would just happily kill off anything he wanted.
Yeah.
Why would that matter? Why did he want them to have a purpose?
I don't know.
I mean, that man.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, anyway.
Yeah. So that's kind of those two questions answered.
Brilliant.
The Knights of Ren are more complicated than you could ever imagine. And it turns out they're not named after Kylo Ren, which was the biggest revelation I learned this week.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That really is huge. The other way around, it would seem.
Yeah, and on that note, we move on to question 4.
Well, this is another one that you've done, Charlie.
Yeah, this is also
taking
me.
the lead.
So, firstly, I'm going to have a tea in my Harry Potter mug, your tea in your Rick and Morty mug. Really diversifying our franchises here.
Yeah, you can really tell, where we are culturally relevant in the world.
Yeah, not influenced by media at all.
Nope.
So, question 4 was, where are all the other Jedis Luke was training, or was it just Kylo Ren? The answer is, there are a few out there, but Kylo destroyed the temple, and with it, all of it.
So he just killed all the sort of the Padawans and apprentices that were there?
Well, yes and no, which I'll explain.
Oh, I love that. I love that little lead-in.
Let's do it. I initially thought that Kylo Ren killed all the Jedi and stuff, and there's weirdly a few different versions of the events, so we're almost not entirely sure what happened. So the most canon version which has been established is it's a comic called The Rise of Kylo Ren, and that kind of has Ben Solo's origin into Kylo Ren. The short answer of where are all the Jedi, so during the destruction of the Jedi Temple, nearly all of the Jedi apprentices were killed. And after that, after Luke and Ben had their little tiff, and Ben crushed Luke under all the rubble and stuff.
Yeah.
It was kind of thought that, then Kylo went round and killed all the other remaining Jedi. But, it seems a bit of a quick turn for him. And actually, in this comic, it wasn't Kylo Ren who killed them all. Suddenly, with all this kind of force energy and which was happening or something, they don't really know what caused it, but there was a dark storm that erupted, and that was what destroyed the Jedi Temple.
Wow, okay.
There's a thing of, we don't know what caused that. It's Palpatine. Palpatine would have caused that. That's the answer to everything in this, universe is, what caused Palpatine? It was Palpatine.
Yeah.
So that dark storm, even though I can't find any confirmation of this, it was Palpatine. We know it's Palpatine.
Well, definitely. Or Snoke.
Yeah. Who was Palpatine? It's Palpatine.
Yeah, it's Palpatine. Okay.
As opposed to killing them, Ben actually tried to save some of them. But of course, in this storm, he was knocked over. He couldn't get to any of them. So none of the Jedi in the temple survived. But...
Oh, I love a but.
There were 3 students who were off-world. So these students are Hennix, Ty, and Vo. After they heard about the, what happened at the Jedi Temple, they assumed that it was all Ben's fault kind of thing, because he was the only survivor.
Well, yeah, they would, I suppose.
And Luke would go into hiding. So
I don't really know. How does the news get to them? Word of mouth?
I don't know. I feel like the destruction of the Jedi Temple would be pretty big news.
But then
how they know that Ben was the only survivor, there's probably some explanation to it. I didn't find it. It was kind of just said, they found out and went to pursue Ben Solo.
Damn the press.
Yeah, so they confronted Ben Solo. They actually managed to track him down. And there was this kind of fight where Ben was like, I didn't mean to do it. But they could sense that he was kind of turning to the dark side. So they had this confrontation with him. And out of the 3, Hennix, who was the first one I mentioned, he was killed. But it was kind of like an accident. So Ben killed him, but it was another case of
I slipped. I just dropped my lightsaber.
I just dropped it, and it went. I didn't think he was on the floor. Man,
damn. Yeah. And it ran into him 300 times.
Yeah. It's like that scene in Chicago, where, yeah. If you'd have been there, if you'd have seen it, bet you would have done the same. Wow, we've mentioned quite a few things. Harry Potter, Rick and Morty, Game of Thrones, Chicago.
Throwing in all the pop culture references.
Yeah.
Chicago indeed. How
cultured
we are.
That reference from 2002,
Quite a while ago.
Yeah. So Hennix is accidentally killed in this skirmish. Ben Solo gets away and later becomes Kylo Ren. And then there's Ty and Vo, who are still out there, and we don't know what's happened to them yet. I think this comic series, The Rise of Kylo Ren, is still ongoing, possibly, so we might find out more about them.
Well,
but for now, those are the only other 2.
I mean, you can only assume that before the beginning of The Force Awakens, they died in a tragic lightsaber accident.
Yes.
I imagine,
he was cleaning his lightsaber, looking down the barrel, and just
bam,
turned it on.
Gone.
Yeah.
Gone.
On the bright side, his lightsaber had been fixed, so there we are.
There you go.
Yeah.
Winner.
So in terms of the continuity of this, It kind of clashes with what is said in episode 7 and episode 8, because they say that, Ben Solo caused the destruction of the temple, even though the comic says it's by external means. But I guess, you could say, they've no way to, they didn't know. They could.
Well, you can't prove it.
Yeah. And then in episode 8, Luke himself says that Kylo Ren escaped with a handful of students. So that's actually,
That implies that he sort of maybe turned them and then took them on and they went off in some kind of motley crew.
So when I first heard this, when I watched the film, I assumed those were the Knights of Ren.
Well, to be fair, that would make sense.
Yeah.
That would
thanks to the previous question, we know that is not the case.
That we do.
The Knights of Ren were just some guys.
Just some dudes from a bar.
Yeah. So there's another book called Star Wars, Absolutely Everything You Need to Know. That book states that the Knights of Ren were involved in the destruction. But of course, this comic states that the Knights of Ren were nowhere near. Because we know the Knights of Ren were just some guys.
Well, that's very convoluted and confused. I mean, at least, if you're going to create this awful trilogy, at least try and back it up with some solid canon.
Absolutely. So that's. Are there any other Jedi? To kind of come back to the original question. Yes, but we don't know where the two of them are. I like to imagine they're, holidaying in Mallorca or something,
Yeah.
Been through a tough time. They deserve a break.
Yeah, maybe they're just going to pop up in, say, the next trilogy.
Yeah.
Whenever that turns up as the new sort of Luke's. I mean, who knows?
Know.
I mean, the universe is huge. They could have gone anywhere. They could have found a whole nother, sect of Force users that they decided to be with.
Yeah, I was when I started researching this question, I kind of expected it to be the temple didn't survive, but there was all these other different Jedi going off and doing their own thing. So that's kind of what I was expecting. So I was almost a little bit disappointed that only 2 remain.
Yeah, but also that implies that, do we actually ever know how many Jedi Luke trained?
No,
because, for all we know, there could have been 2 at the temple and 2 off-world, and then Kylo Ren or Ben Solo.
These are all the ones we know of. So, give it a few years, maybe it'll be there were millions of them just down the road getting groceries,
It just seems crazy to me that in that time, what must have been, 20-odd years, 25 years, this guy, hasn't trained that many Jedi, I would assume. And then, even if he has trained a lot of Jedi and they all die in that Force storm, why aren't they doing, out on missions, doing things? I feel like that's a big thing of what the Jedi Order does is resolve sort of conflicts and go on sort of knowledge journeys and soul finding and stuff. And just for only 3 of them to be off world kind of seems a little bit.
Yeah, who knows, what's...
Well, facts to fill in.
Yeah.
For another day.
Writers, do your thing and tell us what happened, Thanks for listening to episode 1. If you enjoyed this and are still listening, episode 2 is out now. So if you want to hear more answers to our burning questions about Star Wars, then get listening.
You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, and Apple Podcasts. How Uncivilized was created, produced, and edited by Charlie Feasby and Spencer Lawrence.